everybody, it's the Trout, and welcome to another episode of the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. What a great show I have lined up today. If you're a Jimi Hendrix fan, you're going to sit back and want to watch this or listen to it on a podcast. Because on this episode, I have two fantastic guests. First, I have John McDermott, who is the producer of the Experience Hendrix Tour. Now, it's been going on for years. Now, they took a sabbatical for 5 years, but they're back now. And if you're not familiar with the tour, John puts together some of the great guitarists of our time to come in and play Hendrix tunes everywhere they go. You got Kenny Wayne Shepherd, you got Kingfish, you got Dweeza Zappa, you got Eric Johnson. I could name them all. There's a lot of people there. It's a great opportunity to see more than one great artist at a time, but also enjoy the Hendrix catalog, which I enjoy playing myself. But also with John is a fantastic, one of my favorite guitar players is Eric Johnson, that Grammy Award-winning guitarist out of Austin. Eric talked about the time he saw Jimi at the same time I did, which was kind of weird, but also how much Jimi influenced his playing, how much he enjoys playing it, and a little insight on the Eric Johnson tone. So if you're interested in Jimi Hendrix, you want to sit down, get yourself a cup of coffee or an adult beverage, because the Experience Hendrix Tour with John McDermott and Eric Johnson is next on The Trout Show. When I came across this thing, Experience Hendrix Tour, everybody knows, if they know me, that I got to see the guy live. And I don't know, Eric, I'm a couple years older than you, but I saw him in San Antonio at the Hemisphere Arena, which has been gone for years now.
Let me guess. I can't remember the date. May something, 1970.
That is correct. Were you there by any chance? Were you there?
I was there. Yeah, and the tickets were like $3.
I had a $6 seat.
Oh man, well, and we met a couple people that said, "Hey, you want to come up to the front?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And we got to sit like fifth row or something.
Oh wow! I was on the side.
I'm sorry.
I was on the side.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, that was an interesting show. I don't mean to jump in, but
go ahead.
I saw Jimi twice. You saw him a bunch of times, didn't you, John?
I never saw him. No, I came to it later.
Oh,
I never did. I never did. It was funny for me. The Warner Brothers movie that came out in '73 was the first, real kind of Jimi that I saw. But no, I came to it just after he passed.
Okay, yeah. I remember that San Antonio show because it was the second time I saw him, and he came out on stage. And I'll never forget, he walked to the front of the stage, and there was somebody in the front that he knew, and he went, "Hey man, I know you." And he reached out and he shook this guy's hand. Do you remember that?
Yes, I
do.
I
remember that. He went, "Hey man, how you doing? I know you." And he smiled, this really beautiful smile.
Yeah.
And it was so sweet. And I was like, "Oh my God, this guy's he's like this human being up there," because it was always like the guitar player Jimi Hendrix. And I was like 20 feet away from him. I was kind of like completely freaked out. But then the whole show, he seemed kind of pensive. He closed his eyes and he didn't open his eyes for 30. I think he played like 35 minutes. And
here's a quick story. So I lived down the valley at the time. So my friend and I, we drove up from the valley to go see him, right? And got the seats. And there's certain things about that concert I just remember completely, just like you got through talking about it. And I didn't see my friend. We graduated. Didn't see him for years, decades later. He found me on Facebook, and he says, "Do you remember the Jimi Hendrix concert?" I mean, this was like 40 years later. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yeah." And there's just he goes, "Do you remember that guy with the big cigar that smoked in front of us?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, You remember that too?" I mean, the things that remember. I remember this. I remember he came out with his white Strat. And he played, I think he started out with Fire. I think that's what he played. But then he did Foxy Lady, and he kind of looked at somebody in the crowd, too, and said Foxy Lady, kind of did his guitar thing, and the gal went, "Oh," if I'm, And he only played an hour.
Mm.
I remember halfway through, he played the Star Spangled Banner. Everybody stood up, and he played the last. Of course, he always played Voodoo Child the last. And then he walked off, and everybody's like, "Where is he?"
Right.
He was gone.
Yeah. Wow.
And I remember even the band that opened up for him, a band called Country Funk, and everybody goes, "Why is this band here?" And the lead singer for the band said, "Hey, we're trying to get done so we can hear Jimi too."
Oh wow, that's good.
That's great.
And the only funny thing about it was when he walked off, of course, the hotel was right behind the arena. And people were getting kind of a little restless. I'm going like, they're like, hey, come on back here. And then the guy from some FM station, I remember I got up and said, hey, calm down. Led Zeppelin's coming. And you remember 1970, that was they were hot. They were hot then too. So John, I'm going to start with you though. What was that drove you to say, I mean, Eric and I obviously are fans of Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
What said to yourself, okay, I want to get involved in this thing. I want to, reach out and work with the Hendrix family and all that.
Well, it's a long story. It started, just as obviously being a fan of the music, and then wrote about Jimmy in national music magazines as a music writer. And then in 1992, Eddie Kramer and I published a book called Hendrix Setting the Record Straight. And the goal at that time was to allow all of the folks who had worked with Jimmy closely to be able to speak in the first person with new interviews, not to just compile things that might have been said, take them out of context. So, that book came out in 1992. And after that, I pitched an idea to Eddie about, and a good friend of ours, Felix Carcano, about doing a tribute album to Jimi Hendrix, where we would give the proceeds to scholarships in his name. So together with Jeff Gold at Warner Records at Reprise, which was his label at the time,
yeah, I remember that.
We put the Stone Free, a tribute to Jimi Hendrix album together with Buddy Guy and Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and the guys from Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, a host of other really great artists. So at that point, the album was very successful. We raised well over $1 million in terms of scholarships. It's actually still being funded by that album today.
Cool.
And I just felt like I'd moved on to doing other projects with other artists. And, but I noticed that the Hendrix family had become kind of embroiled in the very early stages of litigation. Their former lawyer was trying to sell the catalog out from Jimmy's father to MCA Records. So I just, I reached out to the Hendrix family's law firm, and I just said, don't sell Jimmy's dad short. He really does own everything. And his position is really clear. So they were like, okay, thank you. Good talking with you. And, I just figured they got a million calls like that. So they called me about a month later and said, would you come out and meet with us? And that's when I came out and met the Hendrix family. I'd met Al because Jeff Gold, myself, and a few others had helped get Jimmy a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I got to meet Jimmy's father at that time. But it was in that period that they asked me to help them. So for the next 2 years, I worked with them to help win the rights back. And in 1995, Jimmy's dad won. And the company Experience Hendrix was formed to look after all of the legacy of Jimi Hendrix, if you will, all the many aspects of it. And they asked me to manage the music catalog and work with them. And so since that time, Jimmy's dad out passed away. His daughter, Janie, is now the president and CEO. And so I've been with them for almost 30 years. So it's been a really amazing opportunity to kind of, help spread the access, if you will, to this great legacy, on a global basis.
Wasn't there another relative involved too? I mean, Al was there, but wasn't there a niece or nephew, or do I remember that right?
No, Jimmy's mom died in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
And Al remarried, and Jimmy died without a will. So Al, his dad, was the sole heir to the legacy. So he until his passing, he was very much in charge and very supportive of all the work that we did. So he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. Very proud of his son, and rightly so, and just a fun guy to work for and with.
So Eric, when did you realize? I mean, obviously you were at the show like me. Did you start trying to play that stuff right away? I mean, when did you kind of go, I think I want to get involved? Not with John, but just when you started playing, did you say, I got to play some Hendrix stuff? Did that come to your mind, or did you just kind of wait on
I think I always enjoyed playing it, but to really assimilate it and understand what he was doing took time. Because there's all sorts of beauty in his emotion and his intent and his lyricism and his melodical. It just is a full gamut musician that happened to play guitar. It's just unparalleled. But even if you look on just the proudness of the guitar alone, it has to be remembered, put in perspective. 1968. I mean, really, everybody else was doing beach blanket bingo, and here comes this guy, that just rewrote the thing. I mean, when you put it in perspective, it's kind of mind-boggling. So to answer your question, I mean, the first time I saw him, it was so over my head. It was like listening to Charlie Parker.
Oh yeah.
And I was 14, and I'd already been playing guitar for several years, and I was studying, the blues guys and John Mayall, Blues Breakers, and Jeff Beck, and I was listening to Hendrix, but his approach and vocabulary about the intent of how he did everything was really so heads and above everybody else. It was hard to assimilate, really, because it was just so out of left field. So yeah, I tried to play his stuff, but it took a long time, slowly, like time release, to kind of understand it a little better and try to incorporate it in some way.
I'm always intrigued by the fact that here we are talking about an artist that died 54 years ago. And people, I mean, obviously people love it still because you wouldn't have a tour. I mean, and then people, and I think everybody that picks up a Strat or something like that wants to play some Hendrix. And I think it's just also, to me, there's just been so much analyzing of his playing and the stories. I guess the only person really can tell you more, like you were talking about Eddie Kramer, that was there. And I always wonder when they were doing stuff like that. And I remember the album Electric Ladyland. I remember when I first toured his first album. But in Electric Ladyland, if y'all were, well, you might remember, Eric, but that's when Tommy came out. Tommy came out by The Who the same year. So a lot of my friends were like, "What are you getting for Christmas?" And I said, they're all going, "Aren't you getting Tommy?" And I go, "No, I'm getting Jimi Hendrix Experience." They're like, "What do you mean?" And of course, I'm still a Who fan, but to sit back and listen to something like that, that's still, we talk about the Beatles, iconic people, but when you think about his playing, and I know it's been analyzed ad nauseum, I don't know if people really still can figure out how he did certain things, or it's just a mystique to it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's and I stories about him. He wouldn't look in the engineer's booth. He always turned around. All that stuff. I don't know if any of that's true.
Yeah, but it's the quality of the music, I think, that carries the day. I mean, I think that's over 5 decades later, the fact that it is still doing everything that you're saying, inspiring young people to, either dive into the catalog or play guitar or play an instrument, but inspired by his creative freedom. I just think he's one of those few guys that defied the commercial parameters of his time period. He really wasn't looking to be a big pop star. He was looking to make his music and make his statement. And so I think that's always set him apart. So he could have chosen an easier path, but he was arguably one of the most creatively free artists that I think American popular culture has created. I mean, the sheer willingness to instead of just being satisfied as a sideman for the Isley Brothers, Little Richard, and others, he was like, "I'm going to go to Greenwich Village and I'm going to see what's happening there." And he meets Chaz Chandler and he says, "I'm going to take you to London." And he said, "Okay, I'll go there." So, he walked into Monterey with nothing but the chance to show people his talent, and he just destroyed the room. So, I mean, I think he was a guy who sought the opportunity, but just lived to create the music that was within him, and because of its quality, I think that's why it lasts. That's why it still resonates. There's really nothing that you can do to it that, enhances it or makes it more palatable for other people. I mean, all you have to do, as I often say, is once you dip your toe in the Hendrix water, he's got you, because he does all the heavy lifting. True. He does the hard work. It's inspiring in so many ways. I mean, Eric kind of spoke to it, whether it's his lyricism or whether it's the tonality of his voice, certainly the guitar playing. I mean, there's just so much there that I think are connecting points for people. It just continues to inspire folks.
And funny when you look at And I, when you talked about Eric, he was getting kind of pensive looking, all that stuff. I think he was just tired. I think because I was looking one time, I saw a video about their travel schedule, and
Oh,
it was
God.
just
Yeah.
it was just goofy as hell. They'd be
Yeah.
in New York one day and LA the next, and then down in San Antonio. I mean, it was just I'm going like, whoever put this thing together? That's
Well,
just
it's funny. By the
insane.
time you guys saw him in 1970, what's interesting is that Jimmy had kind of won this hard fought agreement with his management to say, okay, I'll do weekends to play live, but I'm going to be in my new recording studio at Electric Lady Studios during the week. So I think they were fresher, but I just think they were so excited to be recording. Then they're jumping on a plane, and I mean, and at that point, you're talking about like bare bones. I mean, they had two or three guys working with them, like nothing like it is today. I mean, they
No,
were flying commercial planes, rental cars. This is not, I mean, it's streets away from what contemporary touring is. It was just he was so much more accessible to the real world and to the delays and hassles of the real world. I mean, there were none of the benefits, if you will, that contemporary artists enjoy as part of touring or at least help make touring more palatable. That didn't exist in 1970. I mean, that's for sure.
no,
And
and
Jimmy was at the top of the game, and it still didn't exist for him.
and it's funny too. I remember I read one time to show you how things have changed. I think I told my mom or dad one time. I said, "Do you know how much he gets paid a night?" And they're like, "No, no, $30,000." And it's like, "Oh my God!" Now it's like you can't even get one hit wonders to show up for 30,000 almost sometimes. So it just the difference in it. And of course, the first thing I had to do is go out and buy a wah wah pedal. I mean, I didn't buy the fuzz. So Eric, when did you go out and buy your wah wah pedal? Because you had to have a wah wah pedal.
Oh, when I was a kid, yeah, no, it's when I heard "Axe Exposed Love," when I was like, "What's that?" Had to get it. Yeah,
And so, the funny thing to me is when you listen to his music, it never gets old. I think, John, you're 100% correct. And new players, they know who he is. That's interesting.
it's interesting you say that about the timelessness, and it never gets old because, well, I mean, it could be on the radio or on Spotify. It could be on like a Pandora or a playlist of just stuff being like assorted music being played.
Yeah.
And this was just not too long ago. I was listening to this playlist that had nothing to do with me. It was just like something he was broadcasting, and right in the middle of all this modern music came manic depression. And I was just like going, man, that is as fresh today as it was 50. I mean, it really was. I mean, it's the spark and the just the purity of the intention. I don't know what it is, but it was as fresh today as it was the day it was recorded. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's just me. And I actually asked some other people, I said, how does that sound to you? How does that stack up? They said, it sounds just as modern as everything. It wasn't just me feeling that way.
Right.
I mean, it's like, it was kind of a unanimous consensus that it just totally, there's not very much pop music you can say that about,
No, you can't. I mean, I've listened to it over and over again. I never get tired of listening to it. And what I did was I told my parents I wanted the album for Christmas. And back then, they had the big console, the Magnavox console. And I said, I needed headphones. And there was no headphone jack. I had to screw them into the back of the speakers in the back. And I still remember listening to that thinking, how does he make this sound go around my head? How does that happen?
Yeah.
And of course it's all acoustics, but I mean, I'm like, that's just phenomenal. But once he died though, that was interesting to me too, was the fact that when he died, then everybody, and John, you can kind of talk about this, they started releasing stuff that he didn't really want people to hear. Isn't that true? I mean, they started releasing this.
I think part of the thing you got to keep in mind is that, when he died at the time during his life, he enjoyed tremendous success, commercial success, the number one live touring act of his era for sure. But he loved to record. He had been denied that opportunity as a sideman. People didn't take him seriously. They didn't give him a chance. He wasn't able to do his own material. once Chaz Chandler took him to England, gave him the gift of the opportunity, he never looked back. So Electric Ladyland, he'd be touring and he couldn't wait to get back in the studio and be recording stuff throughout 69, recording stuff. Now, he was unfortunately facing some litigation because before he was famous, he had signed an agreement thinking it was he was doing some sideman work for an artist named Curtis Knight.
Oh, yeah.
And he thought he was just signing a release to get paid. And what ended up happening is it was an agreement, exclusive agreement, where they had to litigate and there was all kinds of trouble. So Jimmy kept recording all throughout his career and then sadly died. He had built his own recording studio. In 1970, it opens and he's in there recording. So there was this pent-up demand for the music that he had created. And I think that, it started to come out. It effectively filled in what would have been like his next creative step. So there was great anticipation to hear it. Songs like Freedom, Dolly Dagger, Easy Rider, Drifting, Angel. I mean, these are wonderful music. Had he lived and put it out, it would have just been another wonderful Jimi Hendrix record. So, I think the circumstances of his posthumous career, that was a big focus of the book that I did, because I had felt particularly that no artist had ever kind of created that much music, yet there was this incredible demand for it, and and how people were able to put it out. And so I do think that it's a unique study of an extraordinary life. But I always say this: if you could find one more wire recording by Robert Johnson, wouldn't you want to hear it? You know what I mean? It's like, you think of the enormous reaction to the Beatles now and then, because the people did that hunger to hear more. Yeah. And I think with Jimmy, our kind of present responsibility is to fill in gaps and, provide kind of more understanding and appreciation of particular events. Like, hey, this is a performance that's important and here's the reason why. Or here's a documentary about why this record was made in the way that it was. But I do think that, anytime you hear prime Hendrix that you haven't heard before, it still is electrifying. So that's kind of the engine behind it. I mean, ultimately everybody goes to our Experience, Electric Ladyland, Axis, Greatest Hits, whatever. But when you hear fresh Hendrix, it is still, like Eric says with Manic Depression, it's a jolt. You're like, who is this? How is this happening? I mean, this is 1968 or 9 or 70 or whatever, and listen to it. It's remarkable.
Eric, did you ever get to record at Electric Ladyland?
I did, actually. I spent a couple days there. Yeah, which was really...
Because I know it went through a series where it was really popular, and then it kind of deteriorated out, and somebody came in a few years ago and spent money and fixed it back up.
So is it still a working studio now? I don't...
very much so.
I'm sorry?
Very much so.
Yeah, somebody came in there a few years ago and spent money and refurbished it. And I talked to somebody, it's been a year ago now, that she actually worked there as a engineer that kind of did some stuff or whatever she was doing there. And she said, yeah, they fixed it up. I mean, it's an iconic thing. It's like going to Muscle Shoals and record it, wherever. Yeah. It's just an iconic place.
Absolutely.
So, John, you had a series of several years that you didn't do anything. And then you came back, I guess, after COVID. I guess, when was the last time? Has it been 5 years that you guys did a tour?
Yeah. It was. I mean, we were, prior to COVID, kind of, it's funny. Kenny Wayne Shepherd calls our tour summer camp because, everybody, it's a lot of fun. People enjoy being together. And, and I try to keep it where it doesn't become a regular thing, that it's special and unique. That's why we change the songs, the artists, we keep a core of our really good friends and, obviously like Eric, but I think we, COVID allowed us to kind of reset and look at it and say, okay, let's go back and do this and work in some new folk. And, so that was really our, I mean, we don't have to do it. We enjoy doing it. So when we do it, it's kind of the thing where we say, okay, what's everybody's availability? Because that's really the hardest part of the tour is, checking with Eric, checking with Kingfish, checking with, so many of the different artists that we're working with, like, hey, could this window work? Could this window work? And sometimes that excludes some really great people. Other times, you just have to adjust slightly to be able to fit, somebody, like Dweezil Zappa, for example, this year can only do half of the tour. So it's like you just have to be flexible, but it's a lot of fun to do, and the audience really enjoys it. It's a kind of a cool celebration of songs you really like.
And Eric, the video I saw, which I think was for 2019, didn't Mitch Mitchell show up to that gig? Wasn't he there? He was at one of them before he passed away.
Oh no, Mitch passed in 08. It's a while back. Mitch,
oh, then it was an older one. Okay.
Yeah, it would have been an older one. Yep.
Now I know Billy's still alive.
Yeah, Billy was.
I reached out to him last fall, and they said wait. And I feel kind of strange about it. I really like to talk to him, but I don't want him to spend his whole life talking about Jimi Hendrix, because when we saw him, Eric, that was who was playing bass with him, because Noel had already left, so Billy was playing bass on it. Mm. So let me ask you, Eric, how do you guys decide with the catalog who's going to play what? I mean, because
I think John has a lot to do with that, producing the show and stuff. I guess he has to kind of preside over everybody as they kind of filter through that, and he makes suggestions, and people say this, and it's either, oh yeah, that's cool, or maybe that song's not applicable, or maybe somebody's already taken that song, and
John, yeah.
I'm pretty cool with playing whatever, because I kind of have played almost the most of the repertoire over my life, kind of like them all, It's like, I'm like, man, I'm cool, I guess, so it's all good. But yeah, I think just the people, when John puts on the tour and decides, kind of try, it's a give and take, I think, and just kind of figuring it out. But yeah, I guess certain artists do certain songs. If there's
I'm sure everybody wants to do certain ones they like.
Yeah, if the one ends up being, there's so
I mean, I always played my band. I always played Along the Watchtower, and they never wanted to play. My last band broke up COVID. They didn't want to play, Booty Child, because it's mostly me. It's like, what do? We play drums and bass, and what do you do? I go play. That's what I do. And I think the other thing too, John, is you bring along some talent that I saw. I met Allie the other day, but Allie Venable is going to be there from here in the state of Texas. And then you've got the young man. I met him at Allie Venable's thing at the guitar show. I don't remember, it's Mathis, the young kid.
Oh yes,
that won last year.
Yep.
And then you've got a Brazilian guy in there. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing, but also I think you, by doing this, and you guys know this, you expose music by Hendrix to a brand new set of people. I'm sure people come and they go, what is this about? And then all of a sudden they're hearing, maybe younger people may not really understand or may not know that much about Hendrix, and they listen to it. So then you get brand new fans that want to hear Hendrix stuff.
Well, I mean, that's a huge part of the show's appeal, is that the artists get to show their skill in front of fans that aren't normally their fans in many instances, So, obviously, in Eric's case, I mean, he's got a global following, which is amazing. But I know that there are people who have never seen him play and do, and he's such a unique, amazing player. Whether it's Power of Soul or he's, or what's exciting is when Eric, what we try to do is create collaboration. So in the past, we've had Johnny Lang and Eric do Wind Cries Mary. Mm-hmm. Eric has done Are You Experienced, in his own unique way. So I think a part of it is trying to, show the breadth of the influence. So you've got Taj Mahal and the Slide Brothers, these amazing sacred steel players. Prior to his passing, we had Hubert Sumlin out with us, Alan Wolf's guitar player. We have Buddy Guy with us, although Buddy's now on his farewell tour. But, it's like, I think that roots to the fruits mentality is what keeps people interested and excited, because the song is the common denominator. They love Jimi Hendrix and they love the song. But seeing these artists collaborate, and that's a big part of the show, is that what we try to do is not just say, okay, you bring your band, you do your mini set, you go off, the show stops, we put the next band up. It's not like that at all. What we try to do is we present a continuous 2.5 or 3 hour show where all of these artists are really working together for a period of time. Eric will be on 4, 5, 6 songs. He may come off, and the guys from Los Lobos come on, and then or Zach Wilde takes it in a completely different way. So I think that's part of the fun of the show is the really broad range of influences.
When I saw you had Hunter Hayes, was he going to be on this tour? Did I see his
He
name on?
is. He's going to join us in Nashville.
Which
So
makes
he's
sense.
yeah. So that's an opportunity for us to work with someone new who is already out touring, and that's the one little window we were able to get. So I said, okay, come on down, and let's have you sit in the Nashville show. So we'll have a bunch of those throughout the tour where if we're able to snag somebody who's available for a night, we're going to do that. I mean, Robbie Krieger from The Doors wants to come along, and he's a great guy.
Wow.
So there are a few folks like that we're still working with to kind of say, okay, when is this person available, and can we get them to the show and back?
Eric, I'm going to ask you a question. This is off the subject, but I want to know something. I've always wanted to know this. When did you develop the Eric Johnson tone? When I hear you play, I mean, it's just something, and I know everybody plays. I can hear Clapton playing all this stuff, but you have your own tone. And I mean, to me, it all started with the, White Cliffs of Dover song, but how did you come up with that?
Well, it's really just a combination of different things you like. And if you look behind the curtain of what comprises somebody's sound or what comprises my sound, you can see it's not that my sound is it's not that much really of a mystery. It's just I like that really heavy saturated fuzz of Jimi Hendrix. I love the clean tones of Jimi Hendrix, the clean tones of Keith Richards. I love the really woman tone thing that Eric Clapton did, the early Cream. And then I love steel guitar players to get that real bouncy, thick tone, right? And then I love a lot of the John McLaughlin stuff where it kind of some of his early John McLaughlin stuff almost sounds a little bit like Eric Clapton's tone, but with more gain, Mm-hmm. So if all the people I just mentioned, if you amalgamated all that, then you really just have me. It's not really a mystery. It's just the people you like, and you create your own recipe,
Do you think that anybody ever finds their ultimate tone? I've read stories about people they keep looking for their tone, and it's like,
I think musicians have always done that. I mean, you look at all the sax players from the 40s, and they all talk about that, and they're searching for the right reed, and they're working on it's a sound thing, because there is something about you hear a sound and it's like it either pulls you in or you go, you stand back 20 feet away. And sometimes when you stand back, they can be like magnificent players, but if the sound doesn't allure you, you just sit back with your mentally and go, God, they're really great. But if it's a sound that pulls you in, it's not even a mental thing anymore. It's an invitation into this spiritual connection thing, like when Wes Montgomery plays 3 notes and it's all over, or when Stevie Wonder sings, or when Jimi Hendrix, like that. It's enough inspiration to last a lifetime when somebody has that above that higher atmosphere, like May This Be Love, and that solo comes in. It's like, how can you not love the way electric guitar sounds? So you fall in love with this ideal that's so beautiful, and that becomes your benchmark or your mountaintop. And then you spend a lot of time because you've been to the mountaintop sonically, so you have a point of reference of how beautiful it can be. And it's hard not to keep searching for that, because otherwise it can just be like an appliance and you can marvel at somebody's playing, but it's not quite the same invitation into that realm,
And John, you have the perfect job, other than you have to be the producer of this, which is obviously a logistics nightmare to a certain degree. You've done it enough. But you get to see all these great players. I mean, come on.
Well, I have to say we
kind of
picked our friends gig over the years, and they are wonderful, wonderful people. And this is a what's really fun about the tour is that we travel together, we hang out together. I mean, the kind of the common backstage area has become a place where people hang out and talk music, and it's really it's something we really look forward to. We try to make it as enjoyable as we can, because it's a unique experience. We're not a band. We're not out, kind of promoting our new release. It's not like that kind of thing. It's truly a celebration of these cool songs with some really great artists. So, it is a wonderful job. The logistics are hard, but not impossible. But I do think that what's made it successful is the embrace that the participating artists have given it. They enjoy it. They're always asking me, "Hey, we doing a tour? What's going on?" So, that kind of enthusiasm is really the engine for this.
And do you guys, all right, so here's some logistic stuff. Here I am, a player. How do you do the back line? I mean, everybody
Well, you
has
got to do
their
it
favorite
carefully.
stuff, or what do you do?
Yeah, no. I mean, we have Eric's longtime friend in tech, two of them, the great Bill Webb. I mean, we joke about Bill. He's a guy I can't do a tour without. This is just a really talented guy, Dustin Sears. I mean, we've had so many great, Mike Musburger, like a really great kind of crew that's worked with us. So the guitar players and, everybody comes into it feeling really comfortable that, you've got a top front of house guy, top, monitor guy. You've got, your guitar techs there. That kind of thing gives everybody comfort. And then you build on it from there. Then it's the camaraderie of the players, because you're not playing with your normal band. So I think it is enjoyable for the participating artists like Eric to be able to play with different people, meet different people. Even the sound checks and the jams and things like that are just really a great way to, just kind of connect with people that you wouldn't normally ever cross paths with. So, it's doable. It's really, I'm not going to call it a labor of love, because it isn't as if it's a, grinding labor. It's really hard work, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, the payoff of it is it's worth doing. I mean, we've done this now many times. It's our 20th year doing, tours. We started this 20 years ago. It's hard to believe, but it is still fun to do. And it's still fun to interact with the participating artists, I have to say.
Well, and you get people like Eric that say, I want to be along for the ride. I mean,
oh man, Eric has been, I'm not saying this just because he's on here, but he has been a friend of ours and so supportive. He really, the tour, what he brings to the tour is something that's special and unique, but it's also his support of it is the kind of thing that makes what you say, the hard work, the logistics, you don't even think about it, because it's, you're excited about the fact to be able to kind of do this and get everybody together and have fun. So I'm always grateful to people like Eric. I mean, people like Kenny Wayne Shepherd. I mean, good Lord, I can go on and on. I mean, they've just been so helpful and supportive. I mean, until Buddy Guy decided to retire, he had done every single one. I think save for one. Oh yeah. So I mean,
I know he's a big Hendrix fan. I saw him.
Oh yeah, and he just enjoys the process. He really loved being out there with the artist and being able to do different music in a cool way. So I think that extends to all the artists in their own way, whether it's somebody young like Allie, who she made her debut with us. We did a one-off event in Austin at ACL in December of 22, and she was great. Everybody really thought she was amazing. So that was a natural thing to say, okay, come on back. So that's the kind of thing that happens. We get introduced to folks. I mean, it's funny, Billy Cox and Buddy Guy, said to me, hey, we're going to invite this amazing young man to play. You got to come, you're going to love him. And it was Kingfish when we played in Memphis. And at the time he was 16. But Buddy already had his ear out there and said, he's great. And so he came out and played Red House with us. And, now here he is. He's one of the, the guys featured on the tour 8 years later. So it just, we're always looking for people that understand what it is we do and are, are collaborative in nature, enjoy the social aspect, if you will, as I say, that spirit of collaboration. And, from there, it's a fun night.
Eric, it's got to be kind of like a vacation to a certain extent for you guys. I mean, when you have your own tour, it's a whole different ballgame. But you know,
it is nice because the whole the people that John has put together, they do a great job on the tour. So everything's taken care of. So it is kind of you just get to play music, and there's a lot of things you don't have to worry about when you are doing this with everybody else that you have to deal with when you do your own tour.
And it's interesting to me too, for the fact that what you were saying, John, about the people running the monitors, the people running the front of the house and all that stuff. I talked to Walter Trout about a year ago, and I said, Walter, you just walk on stage and start playing? He says, yeah. And I said, well, you don't do a sound check? No. And I said, well, how do you work? How does that work? He said, the guy with me's been with me for like 20 plus years. He runs his sound. He says, I just wait for him to give me a thumbs up and we're ready to go.
Well, we'd have a mutiny if we didn't have a daily sound check. I think.
Oh yeah, I know
tour,
that,
right?
but you're not one guy that's playing the same. It's not the same.
So that's a big part of every day is making sure that everybody makes whatever fine tuning or tweaks or things of that nature. So, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, having when you surround yourself with good people, good things happen, and our tour is proof of that. So we do try to, like we do with artists, get our crew to return, year after year, because I just think it's a comfort factor, for, an artist like Eric, who takes great care in the presentation of his songs and his set, know that while it isn't his tour and he doesn't have to worry about, his own career, like any of the other things involved with an artist being on tour, but knowing that he has the people he trusts on his back line, we're using Eric's amps, we're using Eric's guys. So he knows, like, in a pinch, we can fix or solve anything. And I think that allows people to come to this really free, have a great time, play amazingly, and enjoy a break from their own, the rigors, if you will, of their own career.
Yeah. Eric, this is off the subject a little bit too, but I went down and saw your booth at the Guitar Festival. I guess you were there and you'd come and gone. And I met one of the guys that was there, and he wasn't a guitarist. He worked for some other company. I forgot what he did. And I said, well, what do you do? And he's some kind of pipe company. I don't remember what it was. It was just kind of caught me off guard. And I said, I'm just here to help him out. So, and John, I don't know if you know this, but he has a booth down at the Guitar Festival every year. Eric does. And how many guitars do you put out there?
Well, actually, it's a friend of mine's booth, and he portrays some of my gear because he owns some gear. Yeah.
Yeah, because you had a few Strats and stuff out there that we were trying to unload.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to get rid of stuff and buy new stuff. Hey, like you say, you're searching for it. You're searching for the Maltese Falcon.
John, do you travel with everybody? You go on the tour too?
Oh, good Lord, yes. Oh, yeah.
You'd have to hear the producer.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix and I are we're on artist buses, and the artists, we all travel together, and stay in the same hotel. Like, so, we take care of all the food and all of that. So, yeah, so it's a whole together thing for that month that we'll be out there. So, yes.
I was going to ask you one last time. I can't remember what it was. Something about it, but I just completely forgot what it was. Well, I know what I was going to say. Has people started buying tickets already? How's the sales gone? I know it just came out. Or people started buying?
Yeah, no, it always does very well. We've been very fortunate over the years. I put the show into venues that I think are appropriate, like really great old theaters that sound good, that can accommodate a good number of folks, and so it's every year there's demand from agents to say, are you doing it again? Are you doing it again? So that's encouraging.
It's a good place to be. That's a good place to be.
Yeah, it's a nice place to be. So yeah, so. The Hendrix family, their view with the tour is it doesn't have to make money. They don't want it to lose money, but they just see it as a celebration of Jimmy. You know what I mean? It can't always be like, hey, new album, go buy it, or go buy the greatest hits album, or something like that. Here it's more like, hey, come see these amazing artists and, playing his music. And, you just get to hear these songs in a different context, which is exciting, I think, for fans, because, we have seen so many artists tell us that, they've seen, greater activity, people going to search them out because they saw them on our tour. So, I think that's a fun thing. It's clearly Jimmy connecting fans in a new way, you know, just as he did 50 years ago with his own music.
I know I was going to ask you. Do you record everything possibly in the event that you want to put it out?
We do record the shows, but, you know, we have to be respectful of the fact that the artists, you know, they could be making more money and having so much more control in their own instance. So we don't try to trade on their, you know, their names, their careers. They have live albums and DVDs and things that they do, which we don't want to be competing about. For us, It's the live show. It's a celebration. That's what it is. It's not done to create product. We've been asked by a number of the artists, hey, you know, should we do this? Should we do this? But I don't know. I think by keeping it pure, it's allowed us to kind of reinvent it every year or every couple of years and do it in a fun way without people thinking, oh, you know, I've got an album out and that's going to get in the way of what I'm doing. And I never want to kind of put an artist in that weird spot.
No, I understand. I understand completely. So, well, I wish you much success.
Thank you.
It's been a joy for me to meet one of my favorite guitarists on the other side of the screen. I just have to tell you that, Eric.
Thanks for having me on this.
I mean, when I heard Cliffs of Dover, and I have people on here that can play it, and I'm always going, "You really can play that?" Oh. And all right. So my last question for you though is, did it really only take you 5 minutes to write that song?
Yeah, it took me. It was a really quick song.
Wow.
Yeah, I think sometimes that happens. You know, the just bursts of inspiration. You know. So,
well, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. You guys have a great afternoon.
All right, take care.
See you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
So that's it for this episode of The Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed it. Special big thanks to John McDermott and, of course, Eric Johnson for coming by and talking to me about the Experience Hendrix Tour coming up this fall. And if you need to know more information about either one of those, Experience Hendrix, you just go to experiencehendrixtour.com, experiencehendrixtour.com. All the dates are on there. You can buy your tickets. I know they're playing a lot of places in America. And also, to listen to more music from Eric Johnson, you go to ericjohnson.com and you can find everything he's got going on right there. Anything you want to know about The Trout Show, remember you can go to thetroutshow.com and you can find everything about our podcast, our YouTube, our music, everything at thetroutshow.com. So next time, people, you know what I always say. It's only rock and roll, but I love it. See ya!